This is the review for midterm exam. What is an alloy? An alloy is a combination of two or more metals that when they are completely melted, they are mixed well together. Please name in the same order the metals that have the following symbols. So we have gold, silver, iridium, and tin. Which of the following is an eutectic alloy? Eutectic alloys are alloys that contain the grain or the atoms are mixed together when they are melted, but when they start to solidify, they separate. In terms, question number 4, which of the following type of wire is the thickest in diameter? So when we're talking about a gauge, it's an indirect relationship. The number is an indirect relationship with the size. So the smaller the number, the bigger the size. What is the color that might use to determine the approximate heat or melting of an alloy? So when we do a casting and we melt the metal, we really can check the temperature of the molten metal. So we look at the color of the metal to identify if the temperature is right for casting. And there is a scale that shows us from cherry red to really light bright, the kind of give us a hint where the metal is, when the metal is ready to be casted. For the base metal, they require a higher temperature to be melted, therefore it's more bright, white bright in color. For the high noble or noble metals, the color of the molten metal should be cherry red. Okay. Question number 6. What is the fusion temperature of an alloy? So the fusion temperature of an alloy refers when the atoms out of the alloys or the grains of the alloys, they start to combine with each other. So the temperature has to be a little bit higher than the lower limit of the melting range. And we talk about the fact that an alloy has a melting range, not a melting point. The difference between melting range and melting point is that one element, one metal has a melting point. So let's say gold has the melting point of 1650 degrees Fahrenheit. But if we're going to use an alloy that uses gold, maybe the melting range it's a little bit higher because that alloy contains different metals that may have different melting temperatures. Question number 7. Which metal is added to dental alloys to lower the melting range? So in general, we want sometimes to have a lower melting range of the alloys because the flow of the alloy to complete the casting. And some of the metals, they can be added in small proportion to the alloy to just for this function, to lower the melting range. In general, when we're talking about a melting range, like I said, is different from a melting point. Therefore, zinc is added to control that temperature during casting. Question number 8. The structure of a solid metal could be described as. So if we look at how the grains of the metals, you look under the microscope and you see how the metals and how the atoms and the grains of the metal are arranged inside the metal, we can see that it's an organized pattern. And that organized pattern forms a crystalline lattice. Question number 9. Which hardness test requires a highly polished flat test specimen? So there are different types of hardness test, and it's important for us to know the hardness, how strong a metal is, because depending on what type of restoration we need. So for instance, if we need to do a partial denture, right? We want the metal for the major connector to be strong enough and to not be deforming when we work on it, or if the patient has a tight bite or in any other condition. So in general, metals are, when dental alloys are um, designed, uh, also they are checked for the hardness, how strong they are. And like I said, there are different types of tests, and some of them they require either to have a polished flat surface. Some of them require to have an intender that it's made of diamond or a different shape of the intender. So for highly polished flat uh, metal, we usually like to use a NAP test. On a phase diagram, the temperatures between the solidus line and the liquidus line is usually, so when we start melting the metal, and if we look at the diagram, what's happening between a solid going in transition from solid to the liquid. There is a point where the solid goes straight from liquid into the metal. It starts developing that phase, that stage. And that phase, it's usually when the fusion range of the temperature takes place. What is the purpose of anti-flux in the soldering process? So when we do soldering, the soldering procedure is to put two pieces together of framework. So we have a framework that didn't fit very well. We cut it where the fit wasn't good. We put them together correctly with some acrylic to hold it together in the correct position. And now we're ready to do the soldering process. So the soldering process required to have um, an anti-flux, which is a material that we can apply on the surface of the framework. So it kind of blocks the flow of the solder. So the solder doesn't go all over the place. So imagine if we have a bridge and we had to cut it, and now we're ready to solder it, put it back together in the correct position, but we don't want any solder to go on the occlusal surface. We can add an anti-flux substance to contain that melted solder not to go on that occlusal surface. Question number 12. Which property do metals possess that distinguish them from non-metals? So in general, if we're thinking about it, non-metals and metals, right? One of the first um, property that we see, especially if you think about gold, right? The metal, usually it's shinier, right? So that distinguishes them from not metal. What is the minimum gold content of a high noble alloy? So like we said, there are different type of dental alloys, right? We have the base alloys, we have the high noble, and we have the noble. Base alloys can contain some of the Gold alloy contains some gold, maybe less than 25%. But in general, for a high noble gold alloy to be considered high noble, the minimum amount of gold should be around 40%. What is the measurement of pure gold? So in general, pure gold, it's measured by either the carat or a fine, right? So we can say that the 24 karat gold is 99.999% pure gold, or 1,000 fine, it's 99.999% pure gold. Question number 15. The graph of varying composition of an alloy depicting the solidus and liquidus line is referred to. So like we said before, when we're doing a diagram that depicts that process from when solid is melting and it's going from the solid state into the liquid state, right? So, and that diagram, that chart, it's called the phase diagram. What should be the fusion temperature of a solder for the soldering procedure? So like we said before, when we do the soldering, right, we have the framework, and then we have to use some extra metal to close the gap where we cut the framework to put it back together in the correct position. So for that, we can use a metal that it's called the soldering metal, that it's compatible with the metal used in the framework. And that metal should be a little should melt at a little less temperature, maybe 100 degrees below the melting temperature of the framework. Question 17. What property of metal refer to resistance to indentations or scratches? So we saw before, and we talked about the fact that in order for us to see what kind of dental alloy we're using for different restoration, we have to know how strong or how hard that alloy is. So in general, when we're talking about resistance to indentation or deformation or scratches, we're talking about the strength or the hardness. Question number 18. 1 penny weight is equivalent to. So this is something that it's a formula that we have to know. And again, it's very important because every time we cast, we have to measure the metal, how much metal we need for the casting. So in general, a penny weight equals about 24 grains. And also, sometimes you have to be careful because when you buy the metal you buy it from the manufacturer, it gives it's packaged and it's giving to you in ounces. So sometimes you have to use the formula to convey the penny weights or the ounces into penny weights. Okay, the next question is, which of the following is a noble metal used in dentistry? So from all the metals here are used, all of them are used in dentistry, but there is only one that it's a noble metal. So and it's even had its own group. So if you think about it, palladium has its own group. Question number 20. The term melting point refers to. So again, we talk about one temperature. The melting point refers to one specific number, to one specific temperature. So this is the temperature where one element, let's say gold, goes from liquid solid state into the liquid state. Okay. Question number 21. When casting an alloy, what portion of the flame should be used to metal? So it's very important, first of all, before we start casting, how we turn on the torch casting, and also how we adjust the flame. So first we're gonna turn on the gas, we're gonna lit the gas, and then slowly we're gonna let on the oxygen, right? So the oxygen, it's the purpose of the oxygen is to maintain the gas and to give the intensity of the flame. So when we lit up the flame, the torch, and we have the flame has different, the tip of the torch has a design that allows for a inner cone. And that inner cone, or the reduction zone, is the hardest part of the flame that we can use for melting the metal. Question number 2. So soldering, it's a process by which two metals are joined together by using an alloy that has a lower melting temperature than the framework. What can make the alloy grains larger during the casting procedure? So when we do the casting, right, we melt the metal, and then there is, if we're using the casting machine, the casting machine is spinning and it shoots the metal into the ring, right? And then we have to let after the casting is done, we have to let the ring slowly to cool, because we want those alloy to not become brittle. So the idea is to maintain that slower cooling, because we want those grains to maintain their shape and to not be brittle. Question number 24. In what state of matter the attraction between atoms is greater? So if you think about it, we have mainly 5, but 4 that we use, that we are very familiar. So we have the solid, the liquid, um, the vapor, right? Okay. So when we're talking about the attraction of the atoms, it's usually greater when it is in a solid state. Okay. Question number 25. What is the chemical symbol for gold? And we have to be aware that the chemical symbols for elements, especially if we look at the Mendeleev chart of elements, right, with the symbols, all the elements, they have, majority of them, they have their name given in Latin. So even if we say gold, the symbol of gold, it's not G or GL or GO, because the name of the gold in Latin, it's different. So the symbol of the gold in Latin, and as presented in Mendeleev chart, it's AU. Question number 26. What is the difference between the melting of pure metals and dental alloys? So we talk about the pure metal, that they have one melting point, and dental alloys, which are a combination of different metals, 2 or more metals, they have a melting range. Question 27. During mold burnout of the casting procedure, thermal expansion of the mold compensates for what? So we invested the ring for casting, right? So now we're ready to put it in the burnout oven. And when we put it in the burnout oven, there are certain procedures that take place during that stage. One is the elimination of the wax, and second of all is the heating up slowly the investment to make the investment stronger. And because during the casting procedure, we want the investment to be stronger to withstand the the whole procedure of the casting. So the burnout during the burnout procedure, there is a little thermal expansion of the ring, and that usually compensate for the shrinkage of the metal during the solidification. And if we remember, when we do the sprueing of the metal, right, we usually touch a sprue that has like a reservoir or runner bar that allows for some of the molten metal to stay there to complete the casting when the casting starts, or after we finish the casting and the casting starts to solidify. Question 28. In the Troy weight system, the order from the lightest to the heaviest is. So in general, when we're talking about the measurement of the metal, the weight of the metal, right? We start from the smaller particle till we get to the highest weight, right? So how much we can weight. So in general, it starts from the grain and goes through the pound. Question 29. What is the property of an alloy that allows to be drawn with a thin wire without breaking? So we have metals that are more malleable, um, like the gold. The gold is a very soft metal that allows to be beaten in the sheets and also to be drawn in wires, and that ductility property allows the metal to form those wires. Question 30. The upper limit of the melting region of the alloy is. So this question refers again to the phase diagram. When we're talking about the transition from a solidus to a liquidus, when we apply enough temperature, enough heat to change the state of the metal from um, solidus to liquidus. So the upper limit of the melting range is the liquidus stage where we already achieved that stage. Number 31. Which noble metals can be added to dental alloys to act as a grain refiner, creating casting with smaller grain sizes? So again, those are some of the metals that they can be added in small proportion to change some of the properties of the alloys, especially when we want to have a smaller grain size for an alloy. That has direct implication of how brittle the alloy is. So we always want to control the grain size of the metal alloy because of the brittleness and also how easy it is to work with the metal. Some of the metal that they have very small grain size, they're packed together, they're harder, okay? So some of the noble metals that they can be added are iridium and rhodium. Number 32. Which type of casting uses electricity as a source of energy to melt the metal? And if you remember from your fixed prosthodontic class, when you did your casting, you use what's called an induction machine because that melts the metal through electric coil. Question 33. Which is the best combination of gases to use in torch casting of ceramic metal alloys? So when we're talking about combination of gases and torch casting, right? So when we're talking about torch casting, we said we use a combination of gas and oxygen to obtain a flame that is hot enough to melt our metal. In general, there are different type of gases that they can be used in combination to melt different type of alloys. And when we're talking about ceramic metal alloys, we have a specific melting range of that alloy. So the combination of gas and the gases is very important because we don't want to burn the properties of the alloy using gases that are melting at a higher temperature. So in general, for ceramic metal alloy, we can have either propane and oxygen that are also very much used, or gas and oxygen. Uh, Question number 34. Again, the chemical symbol for the most malleable metal is the most malleable metal, right? The most softest metal that we can draw in wires, or, beat it up and make it like a sheet. It's gold. So gold is the most malleable metal. Number 35, the formation of strongly adherent oxide layer on the surface of non-precious metal alloys that prevents further reaction below the surface of the metal, thus preventing reaction of the metal with the oral environment. It's called passivization. Question 36. When two metals are completely mixed in the liquid state and remain completely mixed in the solid state, what it's known as? So we have two metals, right, that are melted together in the liquid state. But when they start to solidify, they are completely mixed. They're not like a eutectic alloy where they're mixed in the liquid, but then when they solidify, they start to separate. So this one, they mixed during the melting stage, and they stay mixed when they start to solidify, and that's called a solid solution. 1 troy once it's equivalent to 20 pennyweight. 30 weight. What is the process of holding an invested ring at a certain temperature during the burnout stage? So burnout stage is very important for the casting procedure because, like I said, during the burnout, there are two major two major stages that take place. One, the elimination of the wax, and second, to make the investment stronger, to mature it. And there is a a period of time that we have to allow for the investment to heat soak into the burnout oven, and that period it's also indicated by the manufacturer. So always read the manufacturer instructions in terms of how long we should keep that ring for heat soaking in the burnout stage. Question 39. Because of a type 2 inlay involves the occlusal surface, the type of the gold should be. So what type of inlay and gold should be used for what type of gold alloy should be used for a type 2 inlay. A type 2 inlay covers the occlusal surface, so therefore we want a type 2 gold alloy that is not too hard but not too soft. We want something that it's in between. Question number 40. Which is the hardness test that is not effective to use on metal? So like I said, we use a lot of tests to see the strength of the metal and to find out other properties of the metal, but also in our laboratory procedures, we're using different other types of dental materials. And again, we want to know their strength and how hard they are and the properties, other properties related to the strength and hardness. So that will be the Parcol test. So that concludes our review for midterm.